Hi, good morning.
Hello, I'm the first one back. Good morning, good afternoon. Well,
Oh yeah, where are you at?
in England, so it's about 4 o'clock here.
Yeah.
I was a bit concerned about perhaps getting the timings wrong and turning up at completely the wrong hour and not.
Are you in Sheffield?
Yes, Sheffield, yes. So the north of England, near the top.
I got my bachelor's at University of Bristol.
Oh, that's not too far away now.
Near Wales. I mean, I'm also Portuguese, so I'm familiar with England.
Oh, I'm born in Sheffield and studied in Sheffield, so I don't have much excitement in terms of visiting different places.
But hey, you're hosting in an international setting.
I know. I'm really excited for this. I've never done one.
It's been great. It's been really great, and it's been, for some reason, Serena, I'm going to promote you to panelist. For some reason, you're logged in as an attendee. All right, let me make sure that everybody in the
Oh, thanks. Alberto is gonna present for us today. So I think that's why I was entering as an attendee.
It's cool.
Okay, I can also stay here.
Well, because then you can, if you want to, you can monitor the questions, and then you can also participate.
Okay, perfect. That's
yeah,
great.
You're fine. I don't see Alberto in the.
Okay, let me.
I think he was in the previous one.
Yeah, but because he uses my link because he was not able to find the email. So let me check with him. One second.
Right.
Serena, if he uses the webinar link in the Crimson program,
yeah, then you can.
I can promote him in.
I'm gonna tell him this thing.
Yeah, that's funny because when we were in the last session, it was a male person, and Serena, I was like, wait a minute, okay. I didn't want to get my pronouns wrong. Oh, I see. Is it Aziani? I see him.
Family name, yeah.
I'm going to.
He's a colleague of mine.
Yes.
I'm going to promote him.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Like tenor?
If only, right? No, I'm up for promotion for tenure, so.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it should be fine. Hi, Alberto.
Hi, sorry.
Oh no, it's fine.
I was fighting with the camera and then with the connection. I'm really sorry.
Oh, please. It's fine. I'm actually trying desperately to change my name because it's just so weird that I look like Screen 3. All right, let's take it. Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So who are we missing? Mónika. Let me see. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye out, and we can go in order. Are you all like? Let's see. 1, 2. So we have Italy and we have England. So pretty cool. And so are you all in Italy and England? Like I know that Benjamin is, or are you here in the States? Serena.
No, we are in Italy.
Oh, great. So you're like
yes.
six hours ahead?
Yes,
it's 5 p.m.
5 o'clock, yes.
Well,
for all of us in Milan, it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I've been to Milan because, as I was telling Benjamin, I'm actually Portuguese. So.
Okay.
All right. So Benjamin, I don't know why I keep calling you Ben.
That's fine.
Take it away. I look forward to watching and listening to all of you.
No worries. I'm just going to share my screen to put my presentation up. There we go. Can we all see it? Okay. Yep. Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Ben Archer and I'm a PhD student based in the Department of Law and Criminology at Sheffield Hallam University, which is in the north and rainy part of England. So apologies if you can hear any rain on the windows. The title of my conference paper and what my PhD research is about is called Investigating the Introduction and Implementation of Public Spaces Protection Orders. Over the next 10 minutes or so, probably under, I will explain what PSPOs are, a small portion of the findings from my data collection, which I concluded in September. And the specific focus of this paper will be on looking at the localities of PSPOs, the environments, and how they are enforced. So, CrimCom is a global conference. I thought it might be beneficial to begin with by explaining what antisocial behaviour is for anyone who is unaware, and why PSPOs are the newest stage in a long list of antisocial behaviour measures. The definition of antisocial behaviour has sustained since the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 as any behaviour that is in a manner that caused or was likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress to one or more persons not of the same household. For anyone based internationally, antisocial behaviour is often kind of known synonymously for people not from England, with concepts such as civility, with links to the broken windows theory, and is perhaps best known through the antisocial behaviour order, or the ASBO, which was a very prevalent thing in society at the turn of the century. In 2011, antisocial behaviour was attempted to be categorised into 3 categories: personal, which is targeting an individual or a small group; nuisance, which is described as incidents against a community as opposed to an individual; and finally, environmental, actions that affect the surroundings and natural or built environment. So graffiti is an obvious example of environmental antisocial behaviour. PSPOs were introduced in 2014 and are an antisocial behaviour tool that are introduced by local authorities in England and Wales, so councils. As you can see, PSPOs can include prohibitions and requirements, so limiting the consumption of alcohol, and requirements, so forcing dog owners to keep their dog on a leash in a particular area. Prohibitions and requirements are effective against all users of the designated public space and follow the punishments of either a £100 fixed penalty notice, which for anyone who may be unaware is a sort of ticket that's issued on the spot, kind of a bit like a parking ticket but issued to a person. And then if you challenge it or don't pay your fixed penalty notice, you can face a fine of £100 if found guilty of a summary conviction. So, trying to get onto my research in particular, this particular paper, as I said, is focusing on the enforcement of different environments in terms of the PSPO, using the analytical framework of procedural justice. So this is a concept that denotes what that the perception of authority being applied fairly by legitimate authority figures increases compliance for other public space users in terms of the PSPO. PSPOs are introduced against a multitude of different environments, which I will explain in a minute. And a key controversy is surrounding the use of PSPOs against vulnerable groups of people, such as homeless people. So part of the reasoning using procedural justice is to try and understand how local authorities enforce PSPOs and promote compliance in different environments. And also how do local authorities promote compliance when PSPOs are perceived to target specific groups of people? So kind of flipping procedural justice a bit on its head, rather than talking about people wanting to comply, looking at how local authorities make people comply, so shifting the onus onto local authorities. So my research, as I said, is my doctoral research. I've conducted 33 semi-structured interviews with local authority members and police officers in a number of case study areas. These interviews have been analysed using thematic analysis, derivative from Braun and Clark. In regards to the aim of this paper, the findings of the research did not reflect the idea that a consistent approach to enforcement is required to achieve procedural justice, and that the environment in which the PSPO is introduced really plays a key role in the level of success in enforcement and compliance. So there's going to be 3 different environments that I'm going to touch upon in the last 5 minutes or so. Town centres, town and city centres, neighbourhoods and borough-wide PSPOs. The first of these is about town and city centres, which, when factoring in the nighttime economy, where there's a prevalence of people who are likely to commit antisocial behaviour, it was referenced that there's a distinction in levels of tolerance between the types of antisocial behaviour and the people committing it in these spaces. One participant that I interviewed kind of compared it as being the 3 a.m. versus the 3 p.m. debate. So people don't mind seeing people drunk in the street at 3 a.m. if they're coming out of a club, but at 3 p.m. if they see a homeless person being drunk in the same space, that's when they expect action to be taken. This links to a lot of the existing literature surrounding targeting people by their characteristics rather than being consistent in the antisocial behaviour being committed. And participants acknowledge this in the research, acknowledge that there is perhaps a discrepancy in enforcement, as the quote you can see on screen. I do think people aren't treated equally across the board, sort of between the nighttime revellers and the rough sleepers. Part of the justification perhaps given for this is that town and city centres have a much more transient population, people coming to and fro, shopping, going to work, those kind of activities, whereas homeless people are seen as a more constant, stable population in those spaces. Secondly, we've got neighbourhood PSPO, so what you kind of class as your residential environments, perhaps a more consistent population in terms of people who are there, more entrenched and less transient compared to the city centre. So in PSPO and neighbourhood environments, it was found that they were more self-policing and required less intervention. So referencing notions of responsibilisation and preventive justice, and there was less interference by the case study areas with regards to enforcing the PSPO, because as the quote said, it was a community, so they knew that it would get around that. They told you, and if you did it again, and they're more likely to see those people and start enforcing. So because there is a more consistent approach to the people in the environment, it's perhaps suggested that PSPOs are most effective here, where people are actually concerned about being punished for breaching any of the prohibitions or requirements compared to other environments. One of the recommendations I'm kind of making from the research and from the themes that become apparent is trying to explain to local authorities what can be expected from different PSPOs and how some environments will promote a higher level of success than others, such as the neighbourhood environments. So, final one, if I can get my screen to work. There we go, borough-wide PSPO. So this is where local authorities are required to introduce a PSPO against an area where they can justify the imposition of it and the behaviour that's being suffered. But local authorities have introduced ones against whole boroughs, so a mass geographical space. As the quote on the screen demonstrates, one case study area was particularly against it, saying it was local authorities exceeding their ability to introduce a PSPO. They were going beyond their powers, was argued by that participant. But participants where borough-wide PSPOs had been introduced stated that they were doing the best they can with the resources they had available. Over the past decade, there's been a significant cuts due to austerity relating to local authorities, particularly in these kind of departments. So local authorities don't have the resources to be introducing tailored PSPOs to perhaps a few meters square location, when a borough-wide one can perhaps bring a easier way of their time and resources and managing those. It's worth noting though that that probably has an effect on compliance, and participants reflected that in their answers by saying such a broad scope in a borough-wide PSPO gives the opportunity for more people to be ignorant of the PSPO's existence and to be perpetrators commit antisocial behaviour. but most were realistic and pragmatic about what they've got available, the funding, the time. And it seemed like none of them were doing it to perhaps be lazy, if you want. They were all doing it because they just didn't have the opportunities to be more precise with the PSPO. Okay, I think I'm a bit over, so I apologize. That's kind of everything. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We can answer the questions at the end. I just want to make sure that we managed to get through everything. You do have a question in the Q&A, so feel free to answer Chris directly in the chat feature as well. That works too.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mónika, do you want to take it away? Did I lose Mónika? I did. Okay. That was problematic. So, Gian Maria, do you want to take it away? Since we just lost Mónika.
I think Francesco will present on my
Francesco,
behalf.
I'm sorry, Francesco. My screen is tiny. My bad. So, Francesco, do you want to?
All right. I certainly can, although I don't know, is it the correct order? I'm just asking. I can go. I mean,
no, it's not the correct order, but I'm missing a panelist. They came in and then left. So
all right. So okay.
In good old fashioned, you snooze, you lose.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So let me tell me if you see my screen now, please. Do you?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, all right, I'm presenting here the results of a large multi-partner project we conducted, funded by the European Union Horizon 2020 program. And what I will try to present today is how we developed an agent-based simulation of the processes leading to the recruitment into organized crime groups, and how we use this simulation to test the impact, and especially the long-term impact of different intervention policies to reduce the recruitment into organized crime. What I'm presenting is the result of course, collaboration among different authors. My co-authors are here listed on the slide, and especially the second author, Gian Maria, is present, so it will be eventually joining maybe for the Q&A. So one of the issues, the starting point with our project was that there is indeed surprisingly limited evaluation of organized crime policies, despite all the buzz and the fuss in the media and the amount of policies and resources deployed to fight against organized crime, prevent organized crime, and similar. At the same time, we were interested by the fact that some of the most infamous organized crimes, such as the mafias or the cartels, they show a peculiar feature, which is the one that they are continuous in time. They are able to extend their so-called lifetime for longer than just the participation of one specific individual. So they persist because actually they have a turnover. They are actually able to recruit or at least involve new members regularly. And previous research has suggested that recruitment into organized crime is also driven and mostly driven by many other social factors. And in a sense, organized crime is embedded in the social reality, and therefore channels such as family and kinship, or friendship and coming from the same neighborhood, or even work ties and opportunities from the professional sphere are important drivers of why people join criminal organizations. So our job here aimed at simulated recruitment into organized crime through an agent-based modeling solution, validate the simulation through extensive use and recourse to empirical evidence, and especially on a very specific setting, which is the setting of Palermo, Italy, which is the main city and capital of Sicily, and as some might know, is a city also famous for a strong presence or traditional presence of the Sicilian mafia, Cosa Nostra. And then once we created this simulation, we wanted to test the impact of, let's say, 4 different policy interventions that are addressing different mechanisms of organized crime recruitment and see what happens if we modify our simulation. So what is an agent-based model? The best solution, the best guess I can give you, especially given the time allowance, is that it's like a SimCity game where you create the rules and you let your agents play in a world or behave in a world. Our specific ABM was structured according to a multiplex network framework where every agent is embedded in multiple social relations, which are represented as networks. So as you see in the figures, every agent has a household where he lives, has, of course, a kinship relationship. Well, at a certain point, he goes to school, and then when he finds a job, he has colleagues, and then, of course, throughout his lifetime, he makes friends, and eventually also co-offend with some other agents. We also provided our individual agents with very specific features, of course. So attributes such as age, sex, education, employment, and income, natural propensity to commit a crime, criminal history, family, friends, and co-workers, delinquency and criminality. And of course, a small fraction of our agents are already from the outset organized crime members. The basic logic of the system is that individual attributes and network and relational properties determine whether offenders, whether agents commit a crime, proportionally, for example, to the age, the gender, or the presence of specific features that were derived from existing literature, and namely systematic reviews on the factors that drive criminal commission. Also, a fraction, about 10% of crimes are committed by 2 or more offenders. And when one offender, well, selection of co-offender is driven by social proximity throughout the social network. So in line with several pieces of the literature, you basically co-offend with people who are close to you socially. And the idea of recruitment is that recruitment into organized crime occurs when one organized crime member co-offends with one non-organized crime member at least. From that moment, it's a kind of a specific moment in the model, the non-organized crime agent becomes an organized crime member. We tested our simulation across like 30 simulated years. And we deployed in our simulation 4 different and separate policy interventions. The first one was targeting organized crime leaders, where we slightly modified the probabilities of being arrested whenever a crime is committed, favoring or slightly increasing the weight of the probability for a criminal leader to be arrested. How we define criminal leader was the most central individual in the multi-network and who is also an organized crime member. The second policy, we targeted facilitators. I didn't have time to mention that, but I can now. Some agents are so-called facilitators, and they are necessary for the commission of complex crimes. Which one are complex crimes? Well, we simplified the model by defining complex crime as crimes that require more than one offender. So a proportion of some complex crime will necessarily require one facilitator to be committed. The idea of the policy is to target, for example, specific cases like accountants or police officers or truck drivers, who are specific professional features that sometimes have been shown to facilitate or better enable the commission of organized crime offenses. The third policy is primary socialization, where we mirror or mimic a policy currently deployed in a very specific setting in southern Italy, where if a father is detained or convicted for being a member of organized crime through civil or criminal proceedings in court, and with the assistance and accord of the mother, the father parental authority can be judicially removed. And therefore, the father is not formally a father to his children. Normally, the mother and the children are moved to another location. The visits to the father are contingented. And the idea is that removing the father from the family, let's say, violent socialization that frequently occurs in the mafias could be prevented. And the last policy is secondary socialization, meaning that we somehow provided very specific welfare and socialization efforts in the simulation to a selection of children at risk. So we selected a part of school children in the simulation, and we provided them with additional benefits like having better jobs or completing higher level of education. This is like a snapshot of our results, or at least of the development of the simulation. The red line is the baseline scenario. We didn't change anything, we just let the simulation run. And you see that the number of organized crime members slightly increases and then decreases, also because of demographic trends in our simulation. The other lines are the lines of the different types of intervention. And you can see, for example, very clearly that from a certain point, each line drops below the baseline scenario, meaning that the number of organized crime members present in the simulation is less than the ones present in the baseline scenario. And this suggests that the deployment of the 4 policies in the end, at the end of the simulation, has somehow an impact in reducing the number of organized crime members present. We also tested our results with a GE model, and the results are here presented in the table. I will try just to summarize because I see that my time is already running. And we found support and statistical support for all the different policies. Of course, they yield very different, somehow different levels of reduction. In the table, you're seeing actually the policy who yields the best results is targeting OC leaders. So basically, let's say, classic criminal justice policy. But just to conclude, I think the project, I think it was interesting because it was challenging to simulate a complex dynamic such as recruitment into organized crime. And of course, I didn't have time to expand on this, but we actually validated all the parameters of the simulation based on empirical evidence from Palermo. All policies were effective in decreasing the organized crime membership. And at the same time, I think it was interesting or challenging to have an evaluation, a synthetic evaluation that went far into the future. And somehow we modeled like 30 years, so a long-term impact of these policies, which is very rarely possible with other approaches. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great. Mónika, can I hand over the reins to you?
Hello, do you hear me and see me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I had some technical problems with the connection before.
Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So I would try to share my screen. So, dear colleagues, thank you for having me here. My name is Mónika Nogel. I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law and Political Sciences at the Department for Criminal Sciences at Széchenyi István University in Győr. And just so you have an idea where Győr is, here is a little help for you. My presentation's title is The Importance of Legal Regulation of Forensic DNA Phenotyping in V4 countries. So let's start it. Traditional DNA forensics uses short tandem repeats to match a DNA sample to a suspect or a database. It is considered as one of the most reliable forms of evidence in criminal sciences. And also with its transnational exchange, it is an important tool in a fight against cross-border crime. However, where no suspect has been identified, then there is a lack of database, or there is a lack of database hits. These markers cannot help to solve a crime. So here comes forensic DNA phenotyping into the picture. This method seeks to probabilistically infer the age, appearance, or biogeographical ancestry of an individual from their anonymous DNA sample. And this method can provide investigative leads to trace unknown persons who are not identifiable with current comparative DNA profiling. Phenotyping is capable of becoming the most prominent tool used in crime investigations of the future. However, it poses a range of social and ethical issues. First, given that phenotyping tests are probabilistic, the validity and the reliability of this method is questionable at the moment. Second, as phenotyping may lead to stigmatization or discrimination already directed at minority groups within society, particularly with relation to biogeographical ancestry inferences. We also have privacy questions on the table. For example, if these tests provides information that can be also correlated with medical condition, for example, the link between the red hair and increased risk of melanomas. These concerns are also the heterogeneity of regulation cause us to start a broad debate on the topic. Society must be provided by information about the current law. So transparency is essential to receive its trust and support. But despite the fact that the favorable situation would be if the regulation and also the practice would be identical or at least similar, that's not the case. Talking about Europe, or more specifically about the European Union, we have to state that the regulation regarding forensic DNA phenotyping has been not harmonized. Several of the countries do not use this technique at all. For others, it is a common routine. From the 27 member states is currently the specific legislation only explicitly in the Netherlands, in Germany, and in Slovakia. Mentioning the latter, we have arrived to our final destination, so to the Visegrad countries. The Visegrad Group is a cultural, political, and economic alliance of 4 countries of Central Europe, including Czechia, Hungary, Slovakia, and Poland. All of them are members both of the European Union and the NATO. The Visegrad Group traces its origins to the summit meetings of leaders of before mentioned countries in the beautiful Hungarian castle of town in Visegrad that you can see on the photo. It was not a coincidence that the first meeting was held here. It was a symbolic commemoration of 1335 Congress of Visegrad by Bohemian, Polish, and Hungarian rulers in Visegrad. The Visegrad Group has approximately 64 million inhabitants. There is a very strong political, economic connection within the countries, and also the crime and social problems are very similar. And due to the close historical ties and cultural connections, also the legal background is very similar. However, that is not in the case with the regulation related to forensic DNA phenotyping. As I have mentioned, in EU, there are only 3 states that have special regulation for this method: the Netherlands, Germany, and one of the V4 countries, Slovakia. According to Slovak law, testing for visible phenotypic traits can only be performed in connection with a particular serious crimes, or if a corpse or a separate parts of the human body cannot be found in any databases in the European Union. That's not the case with a regulation in other states. So in Hungary and Czechia, we do not have an explicit legislation for phenotyping, so no limits, and there is absolutely a lack of debate on the topic. In Poland, regulation allows forensic genetic data processing only for non-coding regions, though this regulation only applies to when storing genetic data rather than when analyzing it. So it is my firm belief that countries that don't have explicit regulation for forensic DNA phenotyping should be advised to explore the circumstances that would justify the application of this method, prepare legislation that should stipulate that it can be only used in exceptional cases, to evaluate the validity and the reliability, and to incorporate special guarantees into the system. As we, the citizens of the Visegrad 4, are closely linked, our legal regulation should also converge. So if you are interested in more in the topic, I have linked our team's last article in this topic, so you can access it directly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Awesome. And last but not least, let me make sure that I'm keeping track. We've had Serena. Yep. So, yep, Serena.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you see? I'm already sharing the screen. I'm not Serena. I'm Alberto.
Yeah,
I'm Alberto
sorry.
Aziani. I'm Serena's co-author. And good evening, everybody. Good morning, or whatever. I'll spend the next 10 minutes in presenting a study I've been conducting with Serena Favarin from Università Cattolica and Transcrime on the global waste trafficking and its correlates. I can say quite confidently that within the framework of green criminology, in the very last year, scientists and researchers are focusing more and more on the illicit waste trafficking, so on all the criminal activities related to the management and disposal of waste. Nonetheless, it's easy to identify a gap of knowledge. Most of the studies published in the last 4 or 5 years are investigating illicit waste crime at the national level, focusing on the criminals, the actors, the modus operandi, or the regulatory framework that incentive or provide incentives to this form of crime, but they are doing it mostly at the national level or focusing on pair of countries analysis. While the dimension of the actual transnational crime, so the international trafficking of waste, has been mainly neglected, mostly because until the last years, data to investigate this kind of crime were not available. Thanks to the development of the attention on this topic, the situation is actually changing, and in the very last years, data are starting to become available. So what we decide to do is to investigate the trafficking of waste at the international level, actually at the global level, and see what are the main characteristics of the countries that export waste in an illicit and illegal manner, and which are the characteristics of the countries that mostly import illicit waste. How we did it? We relied on the data and information coming from the Basel Convention national reports. So most of the countries of the world are now parties of the Basel Convention. And since 2016, as members, they are formally obliged to provide information on all the seizures and all the interception of illicit waste that take place within their country, so within the state, within the judiciary environment. So we were able to collect information on trafficking activities in many countries. This information provide specification most of the time of the country of origin of the waste, the country where the waste has been intercepted, the type of waste, the volumes, eventually few information also on the actors involved. But we discarded most of this pressure information. We just focused on the connections. So where the waste was coming from and where it was going. Thanks to this information coming from the Basel Convention national reports, we rebuilt the global network of trafficking activities as emerging from the seizure cases. And the slide represents this global network. Specifically, we identified 148 countries. And I want to underline that this is a direct network. So as again, we knew where the waste was coming from and where it was going. Obviously, as I said, this is a picture, a representation of the global trafficking that emerged from seizure cases. So we look at it through the lens of the law enforcement activities. But we try to corroborate this structure, this network, by relying on the single studies we're focusing on countries. So we confirm through the analysis of previous literature that countries as Poland or Germany, here on the left in this slide, are actually central in the European environment for the trafficking of waste. Nigeria as well is the main recipient at the global level and is a local hub in the West Africa. And also, for example, here the largest pink dot is China, which is a well-known receiver of illicit waste. Okay, so we are able to do this description of the global trafficking in waste, and then we transformed this network in a database in which in a data set that we could use to identify and see which are the factors that relate and possibly explain the structure of this network. We did it by transforming each connection in a binary variable. So the connection either exists or 1, or it doesn't exist, 0. So we were able to analyze it with a logistic analysis in which we have 21,000 possible connections, and only obviously a fraction of them is actually active in the global waste trafficking. By relying on the theories that have been developed to explain waste trafficking, and by relying on the operationalization and previous studies on transnational crime, we fought to investigate the specific contribution, the specific role of these 6 dimensions in explaining the global structure of waste trafficking. So we look at the socioeconomic condition of exporting and importing countries. We look obviously at the waste production and management. In particular, we collected information on the amount of waste that is generated and produced in each country, and the share of it that the country is or declared to be able to recycle. We looked at colonial ties. So if we were able to detect and identify more trafficking along former colonial ties, we look at the geographic dimension, as in most of transnational studies on crime. We consider the globalization level of the country by exploiting and relying on synthetic indicators of globalization level with respect to both trade and trades of goods and services. And then we included also the regulatory and judiciary dimension, which is one of the factors that is mostly investigated in the literature on waste trafficking and waste crimes more in general. To structure then the final analysis, we also include a series of control for the demographic characteristics of the country. We included also some control for the general enforcement and the rule of law in the countries. We considered the amount of information that the country itself is providing to the Basel, is providing within the Basel Convention, so to try to homogenize for this potential source of disparity between a country. And then we had the control for the macro region in which the country is located. What it comes out, we were one of the main results which confirm previous qualitative literature and anecdotal evidences, is that the illicit waste trafficking has a strong flow, as is structured in a way in which waste obviously goes from more developed country to countries which are less economically developed, and this is quite obvious. What is interesting in this perspective is that it was confirmed, our hypothesis, that colonial ties are particularly relevant in this kind of connection. So not only waste goes from more developed to developing countries, but it goes following former colonial ties. The possible explanation of these dynamics are mainly two. So the first one is a closer social, cultural, and regulatory proximity between former colonies. And the other one is a more direct and a form of exploitation of these kind of relations. Interesting the fact that recycle as the capacity of countries to recycle their own waste has an impact also on the transnational dimension of this crime. So it has not an impact only in the national dimension of waste crimes, but also at the international level. And then we were able to confirm that also the geographic dimension and the economic globalization dimension, which play a central role in many other transnational crimes, were actually relevant in these kind of illegal activities as well. When we go to the judiciary and enforcement dimension, what we observed, and as previously hypothesized and formulated by several other scholars, is that the mere adherence to international treaties and the production of national environment laws are not per se effective in reducing the likelihood of being involved in the illicit waste trafficking activities, nor as a source country, nor as an importer country, so a destination country. Fortunately, what is actually playing a role is the creation of specialized national environmental courts and tribunals. So the more the country is able to set up this kind of institution, the less likely it is to be the recipient of illicit trades. Last point, last results concern the control of corruption and the rule of law. So we didn't find any significant effect with respect of importing countries. So these two factors seems not to play a role in for being recipients of illicit waste, but actually they play a role as exporter. the more the country is able to control the corruption and the stronger is the rule of law, the more likely is that the country become an exporter of illicit waste, which makes sense in the sense that it, because of this high level of control of corruption and the validity of rule of law, it's become harder to illicitly manage and dispose the waste within the country. So people who want to save on the management of waste are forced to traffic it to other area of the world. In turn, this is, we think, calls for a more globalized and international approach to this specific sort of crime. If you want to go more into in this dynamic, in this study, wants to work on the same data, you want to read our hypotheses and limits of this analysis, we have a paper has been recently published by on the Journal of Contemporary Criminal Justice, or you can write to us. Our email is name.lastname@unicat.it.
You may want to go on with the slides so they can. We can see still part of the methodology, so probably.
Fantastic.
I realized also before I didn't want to. Well, maybe just with the our.
So I had my results, and this is our the first the title of our journal, and again our emails in case you have any comments or any anything to share with us. Thanks for your attention, and sorry for this issue with turning the slide.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your work. Any questions, comments, contributions? Well, thank you so much for the presentation. They were great. It's been really inspiring to watch and to listen to all of your presentations. And I hope that, you know, post-COVID, we can all see each other in real life. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. It was awesome.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for organizing all this.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's been a blast. It's been so fun. Thank you so much. Yeah. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend or rest of the conference.
Have a good weekend.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.